Hello and welcome to Transcendence Radio. This is your host, Jessica Ahlstrom, CEO of Transcendence Wellness Center and Vice President of Transcendence Academy, the new paradigm in children's education school for kids. I'm so excited about this week's guest. Wendy Kennedy is an intuitive, an empath, a channel. She's been channeling for 20 years. She's used her gifts and abilities to work with beings in other realms and dimensions to assist others in recognizing and releasing old patterns and helping them live a more whole, integrated life. Wendy, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you on this show because I gotta just give you my little geeky backstory on my following of you. About 10 years ago, I had kind of an intense awakening, and you were one of the first videos that I found on YouTube, and I literally religiously watched everything that you had, and it just resonated so powerfully with me that it was a huge shift for me. And I decided that I was going to actually take responsibility for my life. And so, Wendy, I'm so excited that you are here. Welcome. How are you?
Oh, thank you. That's amazing.
I had to give you the props because you were one of my pioneer teachers. So this is awesome having you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I wanted to kind of jump in. I mean, I know that our following that we have on this radio station is very open and looking for tools. One of the things that we do at Transcendence is we're not about teaching spirituality. We're about the practical application of spirituality. So it's like the tools that we need to, look within and heal within, and, the reflections that trigger us on the outside, we are working to heal on the inside. And so that's pretty much all we do at Transcendence. And so for us to have you on the show is just amazing, because I know that the information that you've delivered over the last 20 years just has been all about that. So what are you working on right now?
Well, you know what? A lot of it is back to basics.
Yes.
Because, we've a lot of us have been working for a really long time in amassing all of these tools and all these bits and pieces of information, but we're not really applying the information. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the point that we've come to. It's time to stop gathering all of these tools and starting to use them and putting them into practical application. And I love to hear about your center, because that's kind of what the guides are all about, and that's where the focus is right now. Certainly in the work that I'm doing with groups, or whether I'm working in private sessions, it's always just back to the basic stuff. We're looking for something that just seems so big, and we're waiting for this huge aha moment. But really, it's about the subtleties and being really conscious of the moment and what you're doing in the moment. How am I feeling? Where am I vibrating? What's going on with me physically, emotionally, mentally? And we're spending so much time in the doing state. I mean, that's the state of our society at the moment. Mm-hmm. The masculine energy is so prized. The feminine energy isn't really honored, and we're trying to bring that back. And the feminine is the restorative energy. It's the receptive energy, and we're spending so much time in that active state that we're not stopping to really see where we are, to look within, and that's a lot of the information that's coming through right now.
Wow, that's exactly what we feel too on this end. So, what are some of the things that you're getting downloaded to you personally, or for the people that you're working for? Is like, what tools are? I mean, I know it's back to basics, but what is it? Is it like more looking? Because I know for me, what I'm getting right now is look to your reality for the reflection and work on that in the moment.
Right. So, I mean, that's really a big piece of it. So, it's becoming more conscious throughout the day. It's not just about sitting and doing meditation and thinking about what you want to create once a day anymore. Mm-hmm. That's not enough to get the job done.
Right.
So it's about sitting down and setting an intention and how you want your day to flow, and then checking in more frequently through the day. So maybe an hour later you set an alarm and the alarm goes off, and you just simply check in. Where am I? Mm-hmm. Where am I vibrating physically? So is my body in any sort of discomfort? Am I carrying any tension in the body? And if so, then it's realigning and letting go of that. And then checking in emotionally. What's going on with me emotionally? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Am I stressed? Or am I feeling happy or joyous? And if you're in one of those lower states, it's about, again, just kind of releasing it. It's the same process that you go through when you relax the physical body. You set an intention, and as you breathe, you just relax. It's something that you're not really conscious that I'm relaxing this muscle and that muscle and how you're doing it, but you've given the cells the instruction and they follow through, and it's the same thing with the emotions. And then mentally, where are you? If you're thinking about the past or the future and it's a time that you haven't set aside to examine that, then you are resonating at some level of fear.
Right.
Because you're thinking about the past because there's some level of guilt, shame, or blame that you're still hanging on to. You want to change something. You want to alter it, and it's not possible to do from this now moment. And if you're thinking about the future, you're usually wanting to control something. You're wanting to figure out how things are going to unfold so that you can be safe, so that you can be accepted.
Yes.
And again, another level of fear. So the more we can start to pay attention to where we're vibrating in the moment, the more we can make course corrections so that by the time we get to the end of the day, excuse me, we're not exhausted. You know, we haven't started out high because we sat down and we meditated and we set our intentions and we were feeling great. And then, you know, by the end of the day, we're frustrated with everybody and we're down in the pits. But if we're recalibrating as we go, then, you know, we're able to keep our frequency up. We're not dropping out as far. We're able to keep it in the mid-range at least, if not higher.
Well, and the higher that you keep the frequency, the faster the shadows show up, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're noticing. We're staying higher longer, but it's definitely the big stuff that we haven't been looking at in a really long time is kind of rearing its head, and our challenge is to keep that state of being no matter what's going on. So what information are you getting as far as how to process that stuff when it does come up?
Really just making time for yourself is huge. It sounds so simple, but, you know, sometimes we're aware that stuff is coming up, but we're not taking time to sit down and address it. You know, we recognize the pattern, but we're not shifting it. So part of it is about taking time and then just acknowledging how that pattern is serving you, because if there wasn't some part of your psyche that believes that it was serving you, you wouldn't keep repeating it.
Right.
And it may be that, you know, that sensation of keeping yourself separate makes you feel safe, but it's also that thing that creates loneliness within you.
Right.
So even though there's a part of you that would like to connect with others, you think, oh, it's not so safe because they're going to judge me as being strange, so I have to keep my distance. So you may have multiple programs going on, and the safety program is going to win out. So that program has to be integrated. So when you stop to look and see how it's still serving you, what belief you're holding in there, then you can start to let it go.
Okay.
And that, how do you let it go?
Right.
That's the other piece, you know.
That's the million-dollar question.
and we clear in levels and layers. And, you know, even for my own life, I think, oh, my gosh, am I getting to the bottom of this? Because this is still here.
So many layers, I know.
But, you know, it's so many lifetimes of that repeated pattern as well. So, you know, it's just, if it's showing up, great. It's just more for me to let go of so I can lighten up more. And sometimes it's about just keep reaffirming the positive, because as the guides explain it to me, each time you create that affirmation or that incantation, whatever you would like to call it, you are creating new neural pathways. You're creating new habits that will then run at the subconscious level to replace the ones that you've started early on. And it just requires practice and doing it over and over and over.
Yes, so it's like re-recording over the old stories and programs. Okay.
And the emotional piece is important.
Okay.
Because as you hold a thought about what you want to achieve or what you want to experience, feeling it and imagining it is going to allow it to take deeper root. That's what drives it into being, as the guides say. It's like stepping on the accelerator pedal in the car.
Okay.
So the emotional component is really important when you're thinking about things that you want to create. You need to feel what it would be like.
Yes, absolutely. I teach a workshop here where I teach frequency and vibration through the art of becoming the frequency of what you want. And so it's like if you want more money, you see what does money represent, and money represents freedom. So we actually in class become the vibration of freedom. And then we feel that viscerally. And what I've noticed is all those old belief systems come right up, because you're only able to hold that feeling or that state of being, for a while until that subconscious information wants to come up and say, okay, we really want to give this to you, but you've got this hiding or running in your program field. And so that's what is really coming up in the workshop, is all the old belief systems and how we process those out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, because, for the first 30 seconds when you start to think about something, it feels great.
Yeah, right. Until you get the bill in the mail or something, and then you drop out.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what's going on? I know here I act as a life coach. I'm a teacher. I'm also a medical intuitive, and I've been getting, if I feel like every month people are coming in with a different kind of body theme, whether it's, thyroid or aches and pains, low back pain, migraines. It seems like it's just kind of coming in waves. What are you seeing as far as the energetic trend on that?
Well, I know really since last summer of 2014, we've been processing a lot of energy around persecution. And I'm still seeing the ramifications of that. Even though my guide said we're moving out of it, I'm still seeing a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So that can show up a lot in the throat chakra. But especially for those that are, and I'm a little leery of using this term, but are light workers, those
right.
who are using their gifts and skills and abilities to help people in the metaphysical fields. Specifically for them, they've usually had a lot of lifetimes where they have done that work, and there's usually a fair amount of persecution that they're processing through. So that seems to be one of the big themes that is going on. But just in general, there's also, for everybody across the board, any sort of imbalance in their field, meaning any sort of judgment that they're holding, that's showing up with all different kinds of physical ailments. And, the guides are talking about hormones being out of balance, or sleep patterns being particularly off, or prolonged colds. And it's not so much the typical cold or the typical condition that we've created for ourselves. It's more of a purging at a cellular level, and that's why some of these things don't really have a root in a physical cause. They're more emotionally driven. And so if we go to try to figure out exactly what it is or why it's not clearing, if you're following a traditional allopathic medicine, you might find that it's taking a lot longer to process through. It's because there's a lot more of the emotional component. And if you don't change the mental and emotional component, then the physical won't change, because the mental and emotional create the template for the physical body.
Right.
So working with the physical is just a temporary fix. And so if you're just working with physical things to try to shift through or move through some sort of imbalance or illness, ache or pain, it's not going to go away permanently, and it will most likely come back if you haven't dealt with it.
Yeah, and what I've seen too is it's like not taking responsibility for the emotional component. Just it causes other symptoms. It's almost like that check engine light that's coming on that we're not acknowledging. And that's why a lot of people who are kind of going to doctors, the doctor's like, I don't understand where this is coming from, because it's an emotional issue. And I mean, I see that all the time, but it's like a lot of people want to, go run to the doctor or look outside of them for some solution, when it's just that nurturing and that looking within and that healing, that program that's running. Now, what would you say, because I do a lot of inner child work here, and that is just so that people can recognize and, accept and, look at their belief systems at where they created it. What do you have to say to people who say, well, I don't know, that probably happened in a past life. How am I going to clear that belief system? Or how am I going to clear that program that's from a different lifetime?
It doesn't really matter if it's from a different life, because it wouldn't be showing up in this one if you didn't have the programs running again.
Okay.
So you have somehow recreated it. And you can't really shift a past life in the sense of trying to fix that life that you're not in. The only place that you can make a shift is in this life, in this now moment. So the pattern may look different in this life. So let me see if I can think of an example. So let's say persecution. Maybe in another lifetime you were persecuted for being a witch, all right, or being a heretic, and you were executed. So that sense of persecution is going to be slightly different than perhaps how you'll play it out in this life. In this life, it might not be to the extreme of persecution. It might just be judgment,
right,
or a lack of acceptance or approval. So if you have that awareness that something has gone on in another life, you can look at the vibrational essence of the issue and see where else in my life am I playing this out. Because you definitely are, and usually it's in more than one area. And again, it might look very different. So you might find that at work, your boss is not happy with your level of performance, or you don't feel like he's recognizing what you're creating or what you're contributing. In a relationship, it may be that you feel rejected because a relationship broke up and you just felt like you weren't good enough. The same program.
Yes.
But
different story.
Looks different on the surface.
Yes, that is so true. And that is something that we teach, is that if, the universe isn't cruel, you're only going to be having to take responsibility for the now. So whatever's showing up in the now is what we need to, look at and recognize and clear. We're going to take a break in just about a minute, but I did want to let everybody know that Wendy will actually be doing an online course on the 23rd of May. And Wendy, what is your website? It's higherfrequencies.net?
That's correct.
Okay. If anybody wants to check that out, she said she's still working on getting all the dates and times, but you can definitely check that out. And anybody who wants to check out our website, it's www.transcendencekc.com. We are on Facebook, too. We have our blog and information about our children's school that we are opening. So please take a look at that during the break, and Welcome back to Transcendence Radio. This is your host, Jessica Ahlstrom, and I have on the phone with me Wendy Kennedy. Wendy, welcome back.
Thank you.
We were diving down deep before the break. The breaks kind of get to me because we're so involved in what we're talking about. Before the break, we were talking about kind of what's going on energetically within the physical realm that's having kind of that emotional effect, and how we can kind of work through the body stuff, and how we can do that by looking at, like you said, how we're feeling, what's happening, what's going on. And going back to what we were talking about, as far as prosecution that's coming up, that's kind of being played out, is that just so it moves out of our system so that we don't have that darkness within us? Is that kind of what's going on with people's memories too?
Well, memories, I think there are a couple things happening with that. Some things that are going on physically and also energetically. But, as far as the persecution piece goes, I think that's allowing us to create space within ourselves so that we speak our truths, so that we're willing to stand up for our beliefs and expressing our truths. The guides always say that persecution is the number 2 issue on the planet. That there is so much persecution for people being different, whether that's in their religion or in their general belief systems, whether it's socioeconomic status. There's just so much going on with persecution. The number 1 issue is self-love and the lack of self-love. So I think, the only way to create a global change is by starting an internal change and working on yourself first, and then taking action and creating steps that build towards the kind of world that you want to experience. It's not about fighting something or tearing something else down. It's really putting your energy into building something up.
Mm-hmm.
But that always starts first and foremost with yourself.
That's so interesting. About 5 years ago, I was, that newly awakened person who was moving into that state of being mad at the world for the war and how we treat animals and how we treat each other. And it was just really it was like I woke up to this amazing idea of who I was and then moved into anger about what was going on in the planet. And I remember this day so clearly. I was, looking for something to motivate me, and I found this, I think it was like a 5-minute clip that you had on YouTube. And it was like this one sentence, and it like literally changed my life. You said, if you're triggered by the war outside, you've got a war going on within you. And I just kind of and I don't remember if those were your exact words, but that was the intention. And I just kind of sat on the floor, and my entire life went, okay, I get it. Time to be responsible. And I mean, literally, it's like, it is so true. That's all I did for like the next year was worked on like that war within, like that self-hate and, feeling different my whole life and being judged for that feeling different. And like you said, prosecuted, but not prosecuted in the way of maybe death, but by my classmates or my parents or in my relationships. And it was a big one. And, to kind of look inwardly and take responsibility for that, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I feel like it saved me. Because I look at the world now, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's still playing itself out, but it's not that triggered, reflection where I don't have any emotion towards it. It's almost like there's a state of neutrality. Yeah,
because it certainly serves its purpose because we live in a dualistic system. Mm-hmm. We live in a dualistic dimension, so we are going to have positive, negative, light, dark. Somebody has to play that role. And, it wouldn't be showing up for us collectively unless that's what the collective needed to see so that we know where, on an individual basis, we need to change. So, when we're talking about tools that people can use, it's a great one. That if you're watching the news and you find yourself really angry and upset about the news, well, what does that story represent to you? What is the judgment that you're holding? And then looking to see where you're doing the very same thing to yourself. Mm-hmm. Where are you judging yourself for that quality? You're either expressing or suppressing that quality, one or the other.
Right. And we've kind of all set this game up where we play those different roles to help us work through that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So like even down to choosing the body that you have or the color of your skin or your sexual orientation is part of working out those themes. Is that kind of the right?
Yeah, yes. So it's so funny. We identify oftentimes with being persecuted or judged for a particular quality in our lives, whether it's our skin color or our orientation or our financial status or our intelligence level or whatever it is. There is something that we will feel persecuted for, and if we didn't take it on with that quality, we'd pick another one in our life.
Exactly.
So we tend to set up our lives with these particular issues in place, and we usually choose parents and families that have a particular set of beliefs to help reinforce it and get us started so that we can have the pattern show up early on and we can try to work our way through it. Mm-hmm.
So what advice do you have as far as like children that are coming in? They're coming in completely, what I can see, they're just completely different genetic package going on there. They're already downloaded with a lot of information, but they seem a lot more sensitive. And what are you getting as far as your guidance on children?
Well, a lot of it is that children are our guides. They're adults' guides. Mm-hmm. They're showing us a new way of being. It's not that they're supposed to be little mini versions of us.
Right. They're not.
What we want them to be. But they are definitely there to show us where our stuff is. Mm-hmm. What buttons are they pushing?
Right.
But they're definitely struggling as well because they are coming in plugged into a higher level of consciousness, and they're having a hard time finding a balance between the two worlds.
Right.
Our world is a very toxic one right now, and it's taking its toll on us physically. So there are a lot of sensitivities that come up for these children, physical sensitivities, emotional sensitivities. And it's, again, a reflection for us collectively so that we can see what we're creating as a world. How is this affecting our children? We are far more likely, when we look at the world from that perspective, what are we leaving for our children, to take action as opposed to taking it for ourselves, because clearly we're not doing it for ourselves.
No, we are not. Yes. And it's like I see the kids coming in with the autism and the, extrasensory and the sensitivities in the skin and all these things. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at like positive perspectives, like look at what this is awakening in that parent, because that parent has that unconditional love for that child, so that parent is going to now look for a solution. And then that's like, oh, different food. Okay, so more organic food and, cleaner water. And so I guess that's like the best reflection of us, how we're going to change. Because like you said, if the number one thing is self-love, we're not going to do it for ourselves, right?
Yeah, so sometimes it's easier to come around to self-love by showering that energy on children. It's not always easy with others in general, but for children, it's much easier for us to open up our heart centers because children are so open. They haven't been jaded by the 3D perspective yet.
Yeah. But I do see it's difficult for them to be, like you said, kind of in both worlds. And that's where that whole technology thing has come in, where they can kind of feel like, they can be more in that fourth, fifth dimensional perspective, like that gaming world and that. And so it's kind of like finding a balance between letting them be here, but also letting them be who they came to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think while that helps them, because the fifth dimensional perspective is one of a collective and a network and an interconnectedness, and the internet reflects that. But it's also very difficult for them because they also need to unplug from that. They need to be outside and connect to nature, and sometimes that's difficult.
Yes.
Because of their sensitivities, they think, I don't want to connect with the world in that way. It doesn't feel safe. So it's that grounding component. And a lot of adults and a lot of sensitives are also that way. I don't want to be in my body, because if I'm in my body, the belief is that the more I feel, I'm going to pick up everybody's stuff, and then I'm not going to be able to cope. But the more you actually ground and connect to the earth and connect with your body, you move beyond that superficial layer where you're picking up everybody's pain or reading everybody's energy at that illusionary level, their filters and programs of lack and limitation. You move beyond that primary level, and you move deeper into their blueprint, and then you go deeper still beyond the blueprint, and you start to see their divine essence. So rather than feeling more disconnected, you're actually going to feel a greater sense of connection and at a higher level, because you've created a greater connection with yourself and with source energy and with the planet.
That's so true. So we were talking on the phone just briefly yesterday, and you were talking about how to ground in a new way to connect with the pulse of the earth, and I was really fascinated by that. Could you kind of like walk us through how you could do that?
So just about any sort of visualization that puts the focus on the body is going to help you connect. But the one that the guides suggest, well, there are two actually, and I'll give you both of them. The first one is a visualization to connect with the body, and that's imagining a beautiful golden light coming in through the crown of your head. And then this light goes into one single cell, and it begins to illuminate the cell until this light gets so bright, it's just like a mini sun, and it goes supernova, where the cell can't contain the light any longer, and it goes into the next cell, where the process begins again until it moves all the way through the body. And then once it's moved all the way through the body, that light goes down through your feet, down to the core of the earth, and it blends with the sun, the stellar light that's inside of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
And then that energy comes back up and infuses once again all the way through the body, and then the energy goes out through the crown of your head back to the galactic center, and then the process begins again. So this beautiful golden light is your soul's essence.
Right.
And you can take just a minute or two to infuse the light into your body. You can extend it into a much longer meditation if you want, but you can do most of it within a minute or two.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking also about getting back to nature more too, and really connecting. I've noticed that when we do that, things get healed a lot faster. Just spending some time outside when you can't beat that cold, or because it feels like you said, no remedy is going to handle the emotional. But there's something about the nature that seems and there's something different about the sun now. I don't know if that's just our take on it, but what's shifted about that solar energy that's coming in?
Well, the guides tell me that there is a different radiation that's coming from the sun, and that it's appropriate. It's the time for it, because the sun is like a metronome that keeps track of the rhythms for the solar system, and it sends off packets of information through solar flares, through just the light in general. And it activates us and gives us instructions to keep us on our path. And, we've had a fair number of solar flares, even in the last couple of days. They haven't been strong ones, but each one affects us, and it affects our electromagnetic fields. And you were asking about our memories, and I think this is part of it. Some of these solar flares will disrupt our own electromagnetic field, and as the guides explain it to me, our memory is held in part through our magnetic field. So as we have this disruption, we aren't going through the same habitual program of memory, and that forces us to go up into the Akashic realms to get our information, as opposed to getting it from our local library, which is our body.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go up to get it, we can get the updated version of the story, as opposed to the limited version of the story that we may have repeatedly told ourselves. In the past, we look at an event that happened, and it may not be exactly what happened with that event, but we've got the image in our mind, we've got the story in there, that this person did this to me, or this is how the event went down, and it may not be an actual representation of the complete experience, but we've taken a snapshot and we keep replaying it over and over and over. And when we don't have that memory to go to, we can't keep defining ourselves by our past.
Right.
We have to redefine ourselves in this moment. Who do I want to be? And that's the other thing that the guides have been talking about a lot. It's letting go of those old stories. And, sometimes that's something from childhood. I also see in the metaphysical community there is a strong tendency for many of us to get locked into a story of a past life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this happened to me in that lifetime, or this happened to me in that lifetime, so I can't do this now. Even in other lifetimes, we'll tell ourselves that, this happened to me, and we'll latch on to it. But there are infinite versions of that lifetime, just as there are infinite versions of how this life can play out. Mm-hmm. And we will take the one that's in resonance with us right now.
Okay.
So every now moment is built upon an agreed-upon set of circumstances, that this is what's going on collectively, and then this is what's going on with me personally. So if I'm telling myself the story that I was a victim, my friend was cruel to me when I was 12 years old, and if I keep telling myself that story, that's going to create a particular vibrational foundation from which I'll create my reality.
Mm-hmm.
But when I let go of that story and I see it in a different way, that changes my vibrational foundation, and I can have a completely different experience than what I might have if I was holding that different perspective.
Right. So
and
it's like changing
versions of that.
So it's like changing that vibrational blueprint.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And that's kind of letting go of identity too, because identity is the story, right?
Yes.
And people have a hard time with that. Once I notice we get to about the 4-month level of of our working together here, people kind of freak out because they don't know who they are without their stories, and it's almost like that place of limbo where they know they're not that old version of themselves, but they don't know really how to create the new one, and they don't believe yet that they can have whatever they choose. And so what we noticed is this period of time that kind of comes where we have to kind of redefine who we choose to be, and it's scary for people, But we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I got a whole bunch more questions to ask you. And again, Wendy Kennedy's, her website is www.higherfrequencies.net. And welcome back to Transcendence Radio. This is your host, Jessica Ahlstrom, and I am talking to Wendy Kennedy. And we are talking about everything from belief systems to new energies coming in to our kids and just, all things to me that are the most important things that are in this universe. So welcome back, Wendy. I wanted to kind of jump into, at the beginning of this year, we, actually at the end of last year, we opened a wellness center, and, we decided that we weren't going to hide behind any medical modality or anything that really had been done. We weren't going to propose as ourselves as a church or something like that. We were going to just be a center of education-based awareness where we were really looking to connect with the root cause of suffering, which was, to me, is lack of awareness of the self and, kind of like those things about yourself that you really haven't owned yet. And so we've built a whole wellness center around that, and we've been blessed. We've had tons of clients come in, and they're actively on their journeys. I grew up really, really codependent in my family. So for me, when I was on my journey, yes, I listened to, channeled information such as you and a couple of other people, and I read, thousands of books, but I really resisted jumping into the spiritual community because I was afraid to get codependent on someone's version of truth. And, that I looked back at that, and it was really hard because it actually took me about 10 years. But what I did was I learned to trust myself. And I learned how to use my intuition as my reality reflected it back to me, instead of asking for someone's advice or, even going and getting some sort of energy certification where that kind of told me what my value was. I just spent 10 years kind of getting up and falling down. And now, I'm in the spiritual community, and I'm still seeing a lot of codependency. I'm still seeing a lot of people holding on to those old ideas, like we were talking before the break, even the metaphysical community. And, people who call themselves light workers and things like that. I think we're all light workers, even when we're holding space for whatever it is we're holding space for. But in your perspective, what I came to know was in 2015, it was going to be kind of the year of manifestation. So it was going to be kind of like a fast forward for us to really be able to see where we are. What are you getting as far as that?
I would definitely agree, and it's going to continue to accelerate our ability to create and manifest because time is compressing. Mm-hmm. And that's also why it feels even more uncomfortable if we're not letting go of our limiting beliefs. We're getting that reflection in a much more immediate and a much stronger way than perhaps in the past, because we're increasing our frequency and getting closer to immediate manifestation. And so anything that you're pulsing out because of the compression of time is showing up faster, whether that's positive or negative. Mm-hmm. And that's why it is so important to really start working on your practice, whether that's meditation, whether that's just taking a walk and connecting with nature, whether that's checking in on a regular basis throughout the day. All of those things will help you so that you're very conscious of what you want to create, as opposed to letting those subconscious beliefs create your reality for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and isn't it go back to desire is kind of when we have desire, although to me I look at desire as kind of the engine that expands the universe. But isn't that also coming from a place of lack? So if time is compressing, what can we do when those feelings of lack start to come up? And I notice that pretty much everything I've ever wanted is moving into form this year. There's a lot of things that I've resisted that are coming up here too. So it's kind of like, okay, slow down, speed up. But as far as time goes, is it really compressing, or is it just is that just the veil thinning, or what is actually taking place there?
Their explanation to me is that as you get higher in frequency, time does not move at the same rate, or it's not perceived at the same rate. So the higher the frequency, the faster it is created and generated. So that's why 20 years ago it felt like a 24-hour day was a 24-hour day. Now it feels like it's more about 16 or 14 even. We just get up and it's time to go to bed again. But that's because of the overall frequency is higher, and the way that we perceive time is increased.
That makes sense. Totally. Because it does. Sometimes it feels like a 12-hour day. Like there's not enough hours in the day. But I've noticed too that people are really just especially in the last 6 months, leaving their jobs, leaving their relationships, changing everything about their lives, being relocated. Is this kind of just like those soul contracts are just kind of moving quicker so that people can have move through the experiences they need to have to raise that frequency?
Well, I think people are aligning with more of their true nature, which is why they're leaving their jobs. They're recognizing that the old patterns aren't working, and to work just for a paycheck, there's more to it than just that. And we have a very sick society because we're not looking after ourselves. We're focused on chasing something outside of ourselves. We're not really questioning why everyone is so ill. Again, it goes to that dominance of the masculine energy without working in balance with the feminine, taking that time for the restorative, the inner work that needs to be done. And I think more and more people are starting to do that, and they're recognizing that it's time to move into greater balance with themselves, and that means making change.
Yeah, and they
are. To make that change feels worse. I think we're getting to a point now, that intensity, that to not make the change feels worse than the unknown of taking a step to make a change.
I would totally agree. It's like the suffering is greater by just not moving. Yeah, totally. Wow. So what do the guides have to say about the coming year or the coming 2 years? I mean, I know we're full blown. We've shifted, and we've had so many changes going on in the last year that I can physically feel. What's the forecast as far as what's coming?
Well, what I'm hearing them say right now is that a lot of our authority issues are going to continue to get triggered, especially around summertime. Whether that looks like more issues around police or government officials, a lot of that energy will be surfacing. And then also at the personal level, anywhere that you're holding issues around authority and aren't claiming your own authority in the creation of your reality, where you're blaming other people for your life instead of taking responsibility. So they're telling me that a lot of that will be coming up around the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. There's also a new energy that we're moving into with receiving more information at a galactic level. They've been talking a bit with me about this, about the fact that we're activating more of the galactic grid around the planet so that we can start interacting more with our stellar family. And so over the next several years, they're not entirely sure where the window is because we keep shifting it, but having more of that information about our galactic family in a very real, very physical, very visceral sense of our galactic family showing up, disclosure in the next several years. And that when that happens, there are certain things about disclosure that will trigger a shift in mindset. Who we are, what are we doing, why are we doing it, how are we treating each other. A lot of that shifts, and these beings have been waiting a bit because for most of us, it still generates way too much fear. We still go into a very defensive posture, and even for myself, where I've had physical encounter. And as much as I channel, experiencing it at that level is one thing, but to have that physical encounter is something completely different.
Right.
And, any safety, security issues that you may have, that comes up. So there's still a lot of healing to be done in that arena. So over the next year or two, more of that. Some shifts in our monetary system, but people always ask, is this about the bottom dropping out? And it's not so much about the bottom dropping out as it is in shifts. There's also a lot of judgment about our monetary system, and there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, especially in the quote-unquote spiritual community. There's a lot of judgment about money. Mm-hmm. And, it is just a representation of our conditional exchange of energy, and any other system is going to be the same thing unless we start working with experiencing an exchange of unconditional energy, and we're a long way off from that. Mm-hmm. So even barter is a conditional exchange.
Yes.
Even if you take money off, we would create another system that was conditional, because we're still conditional with how we treat each other. I will give you love if you give me love back. Mm-hmm. I'll give you this if you'll give me that. So that it's very conditional. Until we change that internally, we can't change our external institutions and systems. So there is some shifting in that, but nothing that's going to be too traumatic.
Okay. Well, and too, as a so-called, whatever you want to call, light worker, I don't know if I would call myself that. I would say maybe more of a messenger. With me, I had to, when I first tuned into my guides about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, the first thing they said is, I was a single mom. I had just moved from California here to Kansas City. I had nothing. I kind of left my entire life behind. And when I finally connected with my guides, they said, work out the money issue first so that you can really do your work. It's kind of hard to meditate when you're worried about your gas bill, And so I really just kind of, for the first few years, sat in that whole idea. And what I got was, it was about value. It's like we chase success, we chase money, we chase lifestyle, we chase all these things, and that's, it goes back to judgment. It's like, I don't want to be judged if I don't have this degree or if I don't have this money. And so I kind of sat in this value perspective for a couple of years, and I really asked myself, what was my value? And that was my self-love healing journey. I had no idea, because it was focused on money, but really what it was about self-love. And when I finally connected with that, it was almost like that desire for money left, because I felt valuable, and then the money showed up. It was really cool. And so I teach that now, and most of the times I'm teaching this particular workshop, I'm teaching it to Lightworkers. And I'm going to tell you, they're the most stubbornest ones, because it's like you said, they have that persecution in their timeline, and they've got that problem with authority, and they're against money, and it's like you can't be against it and have it, and the thing is really we're against ourselves, because the idea of money came from this is our exchange of value. It's like, I give you this, you give me that. That's like me representing that. And so that is one thing that I am adamantly about teaching here at Transcendence, is especially to, the Lightworkers or the messengers, is to not look at it as a money, but look at it as personal integrity and value, which increases your self-love frequency, and then anything that aligns with that just shows up.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, it's a process, but the thing is I know that whatever we fear, it happens, and what we resist only, shows up stronger. But that goes back to exactly with that whole war within, the war outside, and, and it just, to me, it's really about just checking in and seeing self-worth, self-value, self-love, and then all those symbols that we've constructed that will go away when that time being. So we've got very exciting things coming, disclosure coming, and that timeline keeps changing, correct? As far as when we're going to be ready for that?
That's one that's the ever-moving one, because it really is such a game changer, and it's how much of the collective is ready for that energy. There will still be contact with individuals, but not necessarily at the collective level. And I know a lot of people get really curious about that, and they're saying, I want it, and you have to look at the desire for it. What is it really? For a lot of people, it's about proof. It's about validation. And that's the kind of thing that you have to give to yourself first, and then it will show up, whether that's your guide showing up or other beings starting to show up. Just like you were talking about money, once you removed the block to it, it showed up. And I think we do that so often. We want something to avoid the negative.
Yes.
And so we get more of the negative.
Right. Yes, it's like we want the money because we don't want to feel unworthy, and then we get more unworthiness because we can't get the money. To me, it's simple, right?
Yeah. And we have a desire for things. It's just not our attachment. We have to look at the attachment to it showing up in the way we think it's supposed to show up.
Well, we have about 3 minutes left, and I really could spend another 7 hours on the phone with you. So for the next year, we've got a lot of. So when we are dealing with these issues of persecution and authority, we should recognize that and say, oh, this is showing up within me, and then kind of sit with it and work through that. And so we should kind of know that those things. I know that now that you've physically said it, I can think of at least 5 different things that have popped up in my reality that reflect both of those things. So it's kind of cool that we're talking about this today. But and then we've got the disclosure coming up. Who knows when the world's ready? I always say it's like, it's one thing to see a lion in the zoo, but if he was sitting on your lap, it would be a lot different, right? So, well, anyways, I wanted to give everybody, an update on Wendy Kennedy's upcoming events that she's got. Like I said, she'll be doing a online course. And what is the course about, Wendy, on the 23rd of May?
It's called The Activation and Integration of Galactic Light Codes.
Oh, very cool.
So it's a 5-week course where we'll meet online once a week, and the guides will channel for about an hour and a half, and then a second day during the week they'll have either some sort of channeling or a meditation or activation to move you through the week. And it's helping to integrate some of these larger life lessons from different star systems that we're playing out here and looking at the trends of these systems. Awesome.
And you'll have information about that on your website?
I will in the next couple days, and so that'll be up. And then in September, I will be here in LA on the 19th and 20th doing I'll be taking part in the channel panel, which is myself and 7 other amazing channels.
Awesome.
And again, it's a live event here in LA, but we'll also be streaming online.
Great. Okay, and her website is www.higherfrequencies.net, and you can find us at www.transcendencekc.com. Wendy, thank you so much for being on our show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.